What's going on, guys? How is everybody doing? I'm gonna put my mic over here. Hope you guys cannot hear any sort of echo. It's been a fun day of college football today. Gonna go over the top storylines with you guys, and also gonna read some of your questions as my stream has just started. It's weird because when I go on my personal page, it didn't upload yesterday's stream, but I'm going to go for about 40 minutes. College football, they all kind of present their own challenges. I would say that college football presents really like its own challenges in terms of covering the sport, because I don't really know the linemen. It's also tougher because there's just a lot of different instances where you're trying to study a team and everything. But anyway, we got one person rolling into the chat, and I'll look at the chat as we go along here. So anyhow, it's great to be with you guys. You look at tonight's college football games, and I'm going to go through the scores. And the first big takeaway that I have from today is that Kevin Sumlin of Arizona, this is a guy that at Texas A&M, he won 8 games. He's an 8-win game coach. And he had Johnny Manziel, and he was the coordinator for Manziel. He was also the coordinator for Kenny Hill. And I don't know if teams are just on to Khalil Tate, but he was one of the most fun college football quarterbacks, and you thought that this offense would pop, and Houston just looks totally awesome. Kendall Briles is really doing a fantastic job there with Major Applewhite, and that was one of the big takeaways from this morning. The other big takeaway is that Kansas State is just not very good, but Mississippi State is so real. Leo Lewis, Montez Sweat, and Jeffrey Simmons, this defense that they have here with Bob Shoop, the team just runs so fast. And Mississippi State, they are for damn real. And even Nick Fitzgerald looks a little bit better. They got this guy Hill that's a running back from Columbus, Mississippi in his sophomore year. So the Mississippi State Bulldogs look awesome, and they're going to wreak havoc. So that was really the opening games. And then, of course, UCLA and Darian Thompson-Robinson gets totally rolled. So, looking at the games today that started off, that's kind of the first takeaway from the first sort of window. Then you look at the second window, and that featured Will Muschamp. And this was the biggest game for Will Muschamp, really, that he's had in his entire career. It's one of the biggest games. He's lost to Clemson. Georgia's pounded him. And you were wondering, could South Carolina close the gap with UGA? Could they put a scare into Georgia? Could you mark South Carolina as maybe, when you look at it, they had a chance to maybe be the 4th best team in the SEC, because we have Georgia, we have Alabama and Auburn. But right now it's looking like Mississippi State and LSU are 4 and 5 in terms of the best teams in the SEC right now. So South Carolina just gets trampled by Georgia. And really the new offense with McClendon, I think his name is, as an offensive coordinator, Jake Bentley took no shots down the football field today. It was so conservative. Everything was underneath. You have Brian Edwards and Deebo Samuel. You have Rico Dowdle. You actually have talent, but Jake Bentley, he has a decent arm. He just never lets the ball go. And I guess he tried to throw it to some running backs. They try to always run the football and play keep away. But also, the tackling on it, it's like Mecole Hardman. I know the guy's name is Hardman. But, when you pull up the Georgia depth chart, this guy Hardman, Elijah Holyfield, Evander Holyfield's son is so fast. DeAndre Swift, Georgia has a ton of weapons, and Jake Fromm settled down in the second half. It is Mecole Hardman. He had over 100 yards today, and South Carolina's just not ready to play with the big boys. And can Will Muschamp ever get in the type of recruits to be able to compete with Georgia in the SEC East? Because Georgia's right now a freaking train, and I don't think that Georgia's going to have any compelling matchup for a really, really long time. Also in the 3:30 hour, we had Scott Frost. And Scott Frost today, he lost to Colorado. And that was a really, really sad performance because Adrian Martinez is a quarterback that I think can win the Heisman someday. I think Adrian Martinez is a terrific, terrific player. And I think that Martinez is a Heisman Trophy kind of guy. And Martinez got hurt today, which also was so unfortunate. I mean, Nebraska got 6 sacks. Nebraska really is playing well under Scott Frost. Like, there's a difference between how Nebraska's playing and how Arkansas and Florida are. Nebraska with Scott Frost, this is going to be a very fast turnaround, and it's going to be even faster if the injury report on Adrian Martinez comes out and it's healthy. So, today in college football, the biggest storylines I think were Clemson. I thought Clemson would kill Texas A&M. I thought the game wouldn't be close. Dead wrong on that. Kellen Mond absolutely ate apart the secondary of Clemson today. The secondary, I mean, there were guys running wide open. I mean, number 13 on Texas A&M, he had an incredible, incredible game today. He couldn't be stopped at all. In fact, 13 is a guy named Kendrick Rogers. He had 7 catches for 120 yards, and he's a 21-year-old football player. But this Texas A&M team, I mean, in the second half, in the fourth quarter, in the second half, they outscored the Aggies 23-14, or they outscored the Clemson Tigers. And this reminded me of a game where Clemson went to Auburn, and it was very similar. And for Texas A&M, this is Jimbo Fisher's first year, and Kellen Mond was 23 of 40 for 430 yards against this defense. So Clemson does not look like a playoff team. I mean, Daniel Jones is going to get a shot at this defense. Ryan Finley's going to get a shot at this defense. So the way that Texas A&M played in the second half, maybe it's just the excellence of Jimbo Fisher, but there's also some real flaws in the coaching of, Brent Venables and the defense that needs to get fixed, because it was looking like Syracuse Clemson out there tonight. Hi, Catfish. You guys had a big win today over East Tennessee State, I heard. I mean, I don't know if you guys shut them out or not, but congratulations on a big win. But Texas A&M, man, I mean, they're already competing, and the SEC West is just really continuing to get stronger, with the exception of the Arkansas Razorbacks that lost to one of the worst Division I teams that we have in football. They went to Fort Collins, and they got beat tonight 34-27 tonight. So, when you look at the college football playoff, Ohio State looks fantastic. I mean, I think Arthur Sitkowski was playing for Rutgers. Ohio State beat the drums off of Rutgers. So Ohio State looks great. The Georgia Bulldogs aren't going anywhere. Alabama and Auburn in the SEC, they're looking fantastic. And then you look at the Oklahoma Sooners. The Sooners have a great front seven. CeeDee Lamb, Marquez Brown. It is just their offense. I don't know about Rodney Anderson's health, but their offense is going to be really good again. They're the class of the Big 12. They're going to be in the playoff again. The Pac-12, unless Stanford runs the table, they're not going to go in, I don't think. Notre Dame was struggling with Ball State. Notre Dame is in the playoff picture right now. And then you look at the Big 10, and can Ohio State run the table? So I would maybe replace Ohio State with Clemson. I like Alabama right now. And so Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Georgia and Alabama are probably going to be undefeated by the time they meet in the SEC championship unless Auburn wins that game. So if Auburn actually beats Georgia, they could be in the 14 playoff then, which is incredibly intriguing. That game in Athens is probably the biggest game of the season, that Auburn-Georgia game, and that's a really tough game to predict. Jarrett Stidham's going to have to play really, really well. I think it could go either way, that game in Athens. It's a big advantage that Georgia's playing at home. Jake Fromm in the first half today looked a little bit shaky. He threw a bad interception, and South Carolina had their chances in the first half. And Will Muschamp in this defense, I mean, this secondary is just nowhere close to where it needs to be. The defensive line is not elite enough to beat Georgia. And Georgia, I mean, they freaking lose an offensive lineman, Andrew Thomas. I don't know how severe his injury is, but he leaves. And then suddenly they throw out a 5-star guy in Cade Mays out of Knoxville Catholic that, you know, Tennessee should have honestly gotten. So Cade Mays just fills right in, and that's the depth of having the best recruiting class. When you have the best recruiting class in the country, I mean, that's what's going to happen. So I'm trying to have my cat's actually coming into the live stream a little bit, but appreciate you guys. Man, oh man. I don't know about Clemson, though. So you don't have Alabama at all in there. That's interesting to me. That's interesting to me. I apologize about that. My cat's kind of bothering me right now. But Rams tomorrow. What, the Colorado State Rams or the LA Rams? Because that's going to be an interesting game. The best part about college football too is that a team like Kentucky won, and I picked Florida to cover. Kentucky ends up winning the football game tonight. Terry Wilson's a difference maker. Benny Snell's one of the most fun players in college football. Dan Mullen's going to have to get his shit together. Now, the thing is about Dan Mullen is that Dan Mullen, he's going to be fine. I'm not worried at all about Dan Mullen. A guy I'd be worried about is Kevin Sumlin. I'm really worried about him. A guy, you know, there's coaches that are going to get fired. But, you know, Jeremy Pruitt, Chad Morris, you got to give all these guys time. Scott Frost, all the newbies that lost today, you got to give them time. And I was very surprised Nebraska lost. They really shot themselves in the foot today when I was watching the game. But college football, man, it's very, very good. The Minnesota game was compelling. You know, the Kentucky game late was compelling. And on week 2, we had some real good games. Now, USC and Texas is going to be a really low-scoring affair. Maybe USC can get the job done. I want to see the playbook expand for JT Daniels. But again, Clay Helton has a lot of good recruits, and I just don't think he's an elite-level coach. I think Kendall Briles would be a better coach. I know Lane Kiffin's not going back out to USC, but I don't believe in a second about Clay Helton at USC, that being Southern Cal. In the East, the SEC East, Missouri is really good. Their defense playing really well. Wyoming doesn't have the same quarterback it had with Josh Allen. And Dwayne Haskins is a really good player, Abdul. I agree with you. Jake Fromm was mature, and he is a mature guy. He was fine. You know, when you look at today's games, the real surprises to me were that Clemson almost lost the football game. I mean, that kind of BS little ruling that we have about fumbling it over the end zone, the Austin Seferian-Jenkins special. Kellen Mond today was absolutely incredible. So that was a huge surprise. I think Nebraska being this good this early is a surprise. I think Arkansas losing tonight was a big surprise. But things that really surprised me. South Carolina had a chance to really step up and prove do they belong with Georgia, and they did not do that at all. Oklahoma is an awesome team, and I'm surprised that they can just reload like that under Lincoln Riley and how good Lincoln Riley is in his second year of coaching football. I mean, when you look at Lincoln Riley and Kirby Smart, they're some of the best coaches that we've ever instituted into our game. I mean, I think it was Lincoln Riley's first year and Kirby's second year, and now they might be going back to the playoff. When you look at Dabo and Clemson, they're a gettable team. Kelly Bryant today made some great throws to keep his job, but you look at Clemson, and they're not to the caliber. In my opinion, if Auburn and Clemson played on a neutral field, Auburn could get them. When Tua gets a hold of this Clemson secondary, Tua's going to get him. So if you have a quarterback, that's why the Boston College game is very intriguing. That is why the Duke game is intriguing. This Clemson team is going to lose a game somewhere, because I thought Clemson was a team that would reload defensive line-wise. Everybody was talking about them like they were invincible and like tonight's game wouldn't be close. And tonight's game in College Station, the Aggies dominated the second half. And it just shows you that Jimbo Fisher knows his shit. And I know Jimbo can be cocky. I know he can yell at refs. But this guy, Jimbo Fisher, proved tonight his merit, that he's an elite-level coach. And he went toe-to-toe with Dabo Swinney. And I rolled with Clemson. Clemson was up maybe 21-3 in that game. I thought the game would just turn into a rout. And Kellen Mond showed why he won the job. He extended plays, ridiculous wide receiver catches, guys running wide open down the seams. Clemson got torched in the second half of that football game. And when you're supposed to be a dominant team, there's a difference between what Georgia looks like, what Bama looks like, what Ohio State's look like, and then going to Aggie land and what Clemson looked like. Clemson won tonight, but Clemson needs to play a ton better if they are ever going to win this year's college football playoff and get right back into the championship. That's the big surprise thus far, is the disappointment of Clemson, because when you have this high of expectations and you're supposed to be one of the best teams in college football, and you go to a place with a first-year head coach that has just left the SEC West and an 8-win team, and you're one of the best teams in college football, I mean, I think that going to South Carolina is tougher than going to A&M, but maybe I am just wrong. So Georgia, and the difference between Georgia and Clemson is the big takeaway today. Thank you guys for watching the show. I want to congratulate the Kentucky Wildcats on a job well done, a hell of a win. The best news of all is that we got NFL football tomorrow, guys. Have a great rest of your night. Tomorrow, rejoice. NFL football is here. Take care. Thank you guys for joining the show.